I used to think silence was peace, that if a house was quiet, it meant love had settled in its walls. But lately, the silence in ours had grown heavy, thick enough to choke on. Even the ticking clock in the living room sounded like it was trying to tell me something was wrong. My name is Clara, and for 43 years, my husband Henry and I built a life out of small joys. The scent of coffee he brewed before dawn, the laughter of our son, Daniel, when he was little, his giggles echoing through the hall as I chased him around with a wooden spoon. Those memories used to warm me, but lately they've turned cold. Daniel doesn't laugh anymore. When he visits, he sits at the table with his phone in one hand and his wife Lena whispering something sharp in his ear. Their eyes dart around our home like strangers sizing up a place they no longer belong to. I can feel the weight of their disapproval in every glance, as if we, Henry and I, are relics they're too polite to throw away. Henry says I'm imagining it, that Daniel's just stressed from work, that Lena is not cold, just shy. But there's something else beneath her smile, something that trembles like a snake beneath dry grass. That morning, the air was too still for November. The mountain road shimmered in the sun, golden leaves clinging to their last days on the trees. We had planned this small family hike to clear the air. Henry's idea, not mine. He thought a day away from the city would fix what words couldn't. Daniel had actually suggested it. He said he wanted to talk, that there were things we all needed to understand. His tone had been so firm, so final, that I agreed even though my stomach turned with unease. I remember Henry brushing my shoulder as we packed a picnic basket. He said, "Don't overthink it. He's our son." I nodded, but inside I couldn't shake the image of Daniel's last visit, how he'd stared at the family photo on the wall, his jaw tight, before muttering something I couldn't hear. On the drive up, the radio hummed softly. Lena sat in the passenger seat, perfectly still, her perfume filling the car with a scent too sweet to be comforting. I watched her hand resting lightly over Daniel's, her nails painted blood red. She caught me looking in the rearview mirror and smiled. "Beautiful day for a hike, isn't it, Mom?" Her voice was gentle, but her eyes held nothing of warmth. "Yes," I managed. "It is." Henry squeezed my hand quietly beside me, a silent reassurance that everything would be fine. He always believed the best in people, even when it hurt him. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know where in the comments you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, let us begin. The mountain air was crisp when we arrived. I could feel my heart steadying for the first time in weeks. Daniel carried the backpack with our lunch, and Henry joked about how he was finally strong enough to carry something heavier than guilt. It made Daniel smile, faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. We began our climb, the narrow path winding like a secret through the trees. Every step seemed to echo between us, an unspoken rhythm of everything we hadn't said in years. Halfway up, Lena slowed her pace to walk beside me. "You must be proud," she said, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Daniel's been handling everything so well." "Everything?" I asked. She tilted her head, her smile widening. "Oh, he hasn't told you? He's been managing the accounts for your properties. It's quite a lot to take on." My heart stuttered. "I thought Henry still—" She laughed softly, interrupting. "Oh, well, he's tired, don't you think?" Henry, who was walking ahead of us, turned slightly. His eyes met mine, and in that small look, I felt something shift. Fear, shame, maybe both. By the time we reached the summit, clouds were gathering on the horizon. The air had turned colder, sharper. I wrapped my shawl tighter around me and tried to ignore the gnawing in my gut. Daniel was standing near the edge, looking down at the valley below. "It's beautiful," he said. "You can see everything from up here." Henry smiled faintly, stepping beside him. "Your mother always loved this view." Daniel turned toward me then. His expression was unreadable, but there was a tremor in his voice when he spoke. "Yeah, I remember." Lena slipped her arm through his and looked back at me. "You two must have so many secrets from all these years, things we don't know." I forced a smile. "Every family does, dear, but some are better left buried." For a heartbeat, the wind stopped. Even the birds went silent. Daniel's jaw clenched. He whispered something to Lena, too low for me to hear. Then he smiled. Too wide, too strained. He said, "Mom, let's take a picture, all of us, together, right by the cliff. The view's perfect from there." That was the moment my stomach dropped, though I couldn't say why. Maybe it was the way Lena's hand tightened around his. Maybe it was the way Henry's laughter faltered when Daniel called us forward. Still, I walked toward them, because that's what mothers do. We keep stepping forward even when our hearts beg us to stop. If you were in my place, standing on that mountain with your family after feeling the air thick with tension, would you have followed them closer to the edge? Tell me in the comments. I want to know what your heart says. People say you never forget the moment your heart breaks, that it brands itself somewhere deep, like a scar that no amount of time can smooth away. For me, it happened with the wind screaming in my ears and my son's hands on my shoulders. He smiled before he did it. God help me, he smiled. We had lined up near the cliff's edge, the valley sprawling below us, golden and endless. Henry was teasing me for squinting at the view, saying I needed new glasses. Lena stood a few steps back, holding up her phone, pretending to frame the perfect shot. "Closer, Mom," Daniel said softly. His voice trembled, but I thought it was from the cold. "Just one more step back." I remember laughing nervously. "If I take another step, I'll fall right off." Henry chuckled too. "She's right, son." That's when Daniel's expression changed. Something flickered across his face. Something I didn't recognize. Regret? Fear? Rage? I'll never know, because the next moment, the world tilted, and his hands, my baby's hands, were on me. A shove, a gasp, Henry shouting my name, then weightlessness. The sky spun above me as I fell, branches clawing at my arms, rocks tearing through my dress. My scream tore from my throat but vanished into the wind. When I hit the ground, all sound left my world. Only a sharp, hot ringing in my ears remained. For a few moments, I didn't know if I was alive. Pain came later, crawling in from every direction. My ribs felt shattered, my legs numb. I tried to call for Henry, but blood filled my mouth. Then, a whisper. "Clara." I turned my head weakly, and there he was, a few feet away, broken, bleeding, but alive. His eyes found mine, wide and desperate. "Don't move," he breathed. "Don't move. Pretend to be dead." His voice was faint, a ghost of itself, but it sliced through the fog of pain. Above us, faintly, I heard their footsteps. Daniel's. Lena's. Their voices were muffled by distance, but the words carried. "Are you sure they're—" "Yes, it's done. Let's go. Before someone comes." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My body wanted to scream, but Henry's eyes anchored me in silence. So I lay there, limp among the rocks, as my son, my own flesh and blood, walked away. The world narrowed to the sound of Henry's breathing, shallow, wet. Each inhale sounded like a plea. I dragged myself toward him, every inch of movement setting my body on fire. When I reached him, I touched his hand, cold, trembling. I whispered, "Why, Henry? Why would he—" He closed his eyes, pain and something else crossing his face. He said, "I think I know. But you can't panic now. They'll come back to check. We have to wait." Tears blurred my sight. "He tried to kill us?" Henry's fingers tightened around mine. "No, Clara, he didn't try. He did." For a moment, I wanted to stop breathing, just close my eyes and sink into the darkness waiting for me. But then Henry coughed, blood spilling from his lips, and instinct took over. I tore a strip from my sleeve and pressed it against his wound. "You're not leaving me," I murmured. "Not now." He looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was memorizing my face. And in that look, I saw love, guilt, and a secret he wasn't ready to speak yet. Time became a blur. Maybe it was an hour, maybe less. The sun had shifted, shadows crawling across the rocks like slow-moving ghosts. I could still hear their car engine faintly echoing down the mountain road. "Henry," I said finally, "we need help. We can't stay here." He shook his head, weakly. "If we move now, they'll see. They might turn back." "Then what?" I cried. "Wait until we die?" He stared at the sky, his breath slowing. I grabbed his face, shaking him gently. "Don't you dare talk like that." He smiled faintly, that same soft, teasing smile that once melted my anger. "Promise me you'll listen before you judge him." "Daniel?" He nodded. "There's more to this, Clara. Something you don't know. Something I kept from you." A chill worse than the mountain wind crept down my spine. "What are you talking about?" His eyes fluttered shut, too weak to go on. "Not now," he whispered. "When it's safe." Then, for the first time since the fall, I was truly afraid, not just of what had happened, but of what I might hear next. I leaned against the rocks, my body trembling from exhaustion. The valley below stretched endlessly, a cruel beauty that mocked my pain. Somewhere far above, I could still see the spot where we had stood, where my son had smiled and pushed me into oblivion. And all I could think was, how did we get here? What did we do to deserve his hatred? The truth, I would learn later, was far worse than I ever imagined. But for now, all I could do was hold Henry's hand, press my ear to his chest to be sure he was still breathing, and whisper to the wind, "I'm still your mother, Daniel, no matter what you've done." If someone you loved more than your own life betrayed you this way, would you want to know why, even if the truth shattered you? Tell me in the comments. I'll read every one. The world around me had gone quiet, too quiet. Even the birds seemed afraid to sing after what they had witnessed. Henry and I lay hidden beneath the ledge, the jagged cliff wall arching above like a shelter built by mercy itself. My whole body ached, but I couldn't stop shaking, not from pain, but from the thought that Daniel might come back. Every rustle of leaves made me flinch. Every shadow felt like him. I whispered, "Do you think they'll return?" Henry's breathing was ragged. "If they do, we'll still be dead." The way he said it, so calm, so sure, made my chest tighten. "Don't talk like that," I said, trying to sound brave. "We're not dead. We're alive, Henry. We're still here." He turned his head toward me. His eyes were half open, clouded with pain. "Then we have to stay that way." He winced and touched his side, where his shirt was soaked dark. I tore another strip from my torn dress and pressed it against the wound, though I knew it was useless. "You're losing too much blood." "Clara." His voice was soft, almost apologetic. "You have to save your strength." I clenched my teeth. "Stop saying that like you're already gone." He smiled faintly. "You've always been stubborn." I wanted to laugh, but tears came instead. "I'm damn right I am." Hours crawled by. The sun began to dip, painting the rocks orange and gold. My limbs throbbed and every breath scraped against my ribs, but I refused to close my eyes. If I slept, I feared I'd never wake again. At some point, Henry stirred. "Clara," he said, barely above a whisper. "Yes?" "There's something I need to tell you before." I covered his mouth with my hand. "Don't. Whatever it is, it can wait until we're out of here." He shook his head weakly. "You don't understand. It's about Daniel." I froze. He looked at me then, and I saw it. The guilt. Heavy. Old. The kind that doesn't come from one moment, but years of keeping something buried. "What about Daniel?" I asked, my voice breaking. He swallowed hard. "He didn't do this out of hate. He did it out of fear." "Fear?" I repeated. "Fear of what, Henry? He tried to kill us." His eyes drifted shut for a second, as if the words themselves were too heavy. "There's something he found out, something about the money, about me." I stared at him, confused. "The money?" He didn't answer. His breathing quickened. "I meant to tell you. I thought I'd fix it before he found out." "Henry, what did you do?" He coughed, spitting blood into the dirt. "Not now. Later, when we're safe." But we both knew time wasn't ours to bargain with. The sky turned purple, the first stars blinking through the dusk. I gathered what I could, sticks, leaves, anything dry enough to burn, and struck 2 stones together until sparks caught. The tiny flame flickered, small but defiant. I pressed Henry's hand between mine, warming it by the fire. His skin was cold, his pulse faint. I wanted to scream, to curse God, to demand why any mother should survive something like this. But my voice stayed trapped behind my teeth. Instead, I whispered, "Do you think he'll live with it, what he's done?" Henry looked at the flames. "He'll try not to, but guilt has a way of finding you even in your sleep." "I don't want him to suffer," I said quietly. "I just want to understand." Henry's lips curved into a weak, almost broken smile. "That's what makes you stronger than me, Clara." Night fell hard. Cold crept into our bones. The wind howled like a warning, carrying echoes of everything we'd lost. I lay beside Henry, listening to his shallow breaths, counting them like fragile promises. I thought about Daniel, his first day of school,
The night he came home crying because another boy had called him soft. I remembered holding him, telling him it was okay to be gentle in a cruel world. What had I done wrong? Where had my gentle boy gone? Tears slipped down my cheeks, soaking into the dirt. Why would he do this? What kind of son? What kind of man? Henry stirred. He's still our son. No, I said sharply, not anymore. He opened his eyes, pained, but firm. Yes, Clara, still. Always. I turned away, pressing my fist to my mouth to keep from sobbing out loud, because as much as I wanted to hate Daniel, a part of me still loved him too fiercely to let go. That love, twisted and raw, was the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. As dawn broke, the cold light revealed the full horror of our fall, blood on the rocks, torn fabric caught in branches. But we were still alive. We have to move, Henry whispered. Move? You can barely breathe. If we stay, we die here. If we move, we have a chance. So we moved, slowly, painfully. He leaned on me, his weight heavy, but familiar. Every step was agony, every breath a battle. But we kept going, inch by inch, until we found the shadow of a path again.
Somewhere above us, I thought I heard an engine, distant, faint. Maybe Daniel. Maybe a stranger. I didn't know which terrified me more. By the time the sun rose fully, we'd collapsed beside a fallen tree. My legs were shaking, my vision blurred, but I could feel Henry's hand still gripping mine. He smiled weakly. See? You're stronger than you think. I looked at him, at the man who had held my world together for decades, and whispered, Then tell me the truth, Henry, before it's too late. He looked toward the mountains where the sun was cutting through the mist. He will, he said finally. But you need to be ready, because what I'm about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about our son. If you discovered the person who hurt you was driven by fear, not hatred, would you still want to forgive them, or would you let the pain harden you forever? Tell me what your heart says in the comments. Morning came cruelly bright, the sun slicing through the mist like it was mocking us for surviving. My body felt like it had been carved out of pain, every breath cutting deeper. But Henry was worse. His lips were pale, his pulse faint under my fingertips. We'd managed to drag ourselves beneath the shelter of a twisted pine where the wind couldn't reach. The smell of sap and blood filled the air, sharp, metallic, unforgiving. I tore more fabric from my skirt and pressed it to Henry's side again. Hold this, I said. He tried to joke, his voice weak but familiar. You always liked bossing me around. A shaky laugh escaped me, and you always needed it. He smiled faintly, then groaned as the pain surged. I held him until the tremors passed, my hands trembling almost as much as his. Henry, I whispered, we need to find help. There's a ranger station near the base. If we follow the ridge, maybe. He cut me off. We can't go that way. Why not? His eyes flicked toward the cliffs above. That's the route Daniel and Lena took to drive down. If they see us... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. So we went the other way, deeper into the forest. It was madness, both of us bleeding, barely standing, but the fear of being found burned hotter than the pain. We moved together inch by inch, every step a prayer. When Henry stumbled, I pulled him up. When I faltered, he steadied me. That's how it's always been. Even in the quiet years when love had gone still between us, we never let go completely. The ground was slick with pine needles. The air smelled like rain and iron. I could hear the distant rush of a stream, salvation maybe. But halfway there, Henry stopped. Clara, he said, breathless. Rest, just for a moment. We sat against a moss-covered rock, our bodies pressed close for warmth. His hand found mine, cold and trembling. You remember, he said, the first time we came here, before Daniel was born? I nodded. You carved our initials into a tree somewhere near the ridge. He smiled faintly. We thought love could survive anything. I looked at him, and my voice broke. Maybe it can. The forest fell quiet again, as if listening. The silence pressed against my chest until I couldn't bear it anymore. Henry, I whispered, you said Daniel did this out of fear, that there's something he found out. Please, just tell me. I pressed my face into his shoulder and sobbed silently, the forest swallowing my cries. When I finally lifted my head, the sun was breaking through the trees again. Henry was staring at the light, his lips curved in a faint smile. What is it? I asked. He whispered, maybe this mountain isn't trying to kill us. Maybe it's trying to keep us alive long enough to fix what's broken. And for the first time since the fall, I believed him. Act 5. Backstory Unveiled. The things we buried to keep the peace. When the storm passed, the forest felt like a graveyard of whispers. Every drop of rain that slid from the pine needles landed like a heartbeat too loud to ignore. We'd spent the night shivering under that tree. Henry drifted in and out of sleep, feverish. I sat beside him, afraid to close my eyes. My mind replayed his words. He did it out of fear. Fear of what? Fear of who? By dawn, I couldn't take the silence anymore. Henry, I said softly, tell me everything, no more pieces. He opened his eyes, dull gray under the thin morning light. You really want to know? I asked. I need to. He stared at the sky a long moment before speaking. I started losing the factory 2 years before Daniel graduated. Orders stopped coming. Wages piled up. I didn't tell you because you'd already sold your jewelry once before to help me, and I couldn't ask again. I thought I'd fix it. That's when I used Daniel's name for the loans. I blinked. How could you, Henry? He was a child. He was 18, he said quietly. Old enough to sign, young enough not to question. I forged the rest. The words hit me like another fall. My God. He looked ashamed. When the bank started calling, I told them it was a clerical mistake, but they sent the notices to Daniel's address when he moved for college. He found them. He came home, furious, asking why his credit was ruined, why debt collectors knew his name before his professors did. And you still didn't tell me. He shook his head. I told him I'd fix it if he'd keep it from you. I thought time would calm him, but he never trusted me again. I remembered the years that followed, Daniel's short visits, his clipped answers, the way he avoided eye contact when Henry spoke. I'd blamed Lena for turning him against us. I was wrong. He must have hated me too, I whispered. No, Henry said, gripping my hand weakly. He pitied you. He thought you were the innocent one married to a liar. He swore he'd take care of you once I was gone. My stomach turned. Take care of me? By killing me? He didn't plan that, Henry said quickly. Lena did. She's the one who told him we'd never stop controlling him unless we were out of the way. She fed his anger. She twisted it until she couldn't see where her lies ended and mine began.
I closed my eyes, tears burning. So our son became a murderer because you tried to protect me? Henry winced, guilt clouding his features. I was trying to protect us all, but lies, they don't protect, they poison.
A woodpecker tapped in the distance, the only sound between us for a long while. Then Henry reached inside his torn jacket and pulled out a small folded paper. It was damp, smudged with blood. What's that? He pressed it into my palm. The truth. The bank statement proving I repaid the loan 3 months ago. He never saw it. I was going to show him today. I stared at the paper through tears. Then why didn't you tell him sooner? I tried, he said, voice breaking. But every time he came around, he brought her. And Lena, she wouldn't let me speak. For a moment, I hated that girl more than I ever thought I could hate another soul. But underneath the anger was something worse, pity. Because I knew what it meant to love someone who made you cruel. Henry, I said, my voice trembling, if we get out of here, we have to go to the police. He looked at me sadly. And then what? Watch our son rot in a cell while she walks free? Do you think that will fix any of this? What else is there? He took my face in his shaking hands. You still believe people can come back from darkness. You always have. Don't lose that now. His hand slipped away, heavy, exhausted. Later that day, we found an old ranger trail, narrow, half hidden beneath fallen leaves. We followed it, limping, until my legs threatened to give way. Henry stumbled, more than once. I caught him every time, muttering prayers under my breath. When we stopped to rest, I looked down the winding path and saw faint tire tracks. Someone had been here recently. Hope flickered again. But before I could speak, Henry whispered, Clara, promise me something. I turned to him. Anything. If I don't make it out, tell him. Tell Daniel I forgive him. Don't you dare say that. I mean it. He insisted, eyes bright with fever. He was a boy once. My boy. I can't die hating him. Tears blurred my sight. Then you're stronger than I am. He smiled faintly. No. I just don't want you to carry my anger too. We sat there until the sun dipped behind the mountains again. I leaned against him, listening to the faint rhythm of his heart, the same heart that had built a life with me, lied to me, broken for me, and still beat for our son. When I closed my eyes, I heard Daniel's laugh from years ago, high, joyful, unscarred. The sound wrapped around me like a ghost of everything we'd lost. And for the first time since the fall, I let myself whisper the impossible. Maybe we can forgive him too. The forest had turned golden again by the time the pain dulled enough for me to think clearly. The light sifted through the trees like dust through old memories. Soft, tired, forgiving. We'd stopped near the stream, the one that had saved us. I'd built a small fire, coaxing it to life with damp twigs and stubborn hope. Henry sat against a fallen log, his color a little better after the water and rest. I tore strips from my shawl and made a bandage for his side. You always were better with your hands, he murmured, watching me work. I smiled faintly. And you were always better at making the mess. He laughed, a real laugh, weak, but alive. It startled me, that sound. For a moment, the forest didn't feel like a place of ghosts anymore.
As the fire crackled, I found myself studying him in the flickering light. His face had aged so much in the last few days, or maybe I was only just seeing it. The lines, the gray, the exhaustion that came from a lifetime of caring more than he should have. "Do you remember," I said softly, "our first year in that little apartment above the bakery?" He smiled. "How could I forget? You burn the soup every night because you'd rather dance with me than stir the pot. I wasn't that bad. You were worse, he teased, and for a heartbeat, the world felt right again. The moment didn't last long. Pain never leaves quietly. I stared into the fire, the flames dancing like 1,000 tiny questions I wasn't brave enough to ask. Do you think he'll ever forgive us? Henry was quiet for a long time before answering. I think forgiveness comes when the truth does. We've both hidden things, Clara. Me with my lies, you with your silence. I looked at him sharply. My silence? He nodded gently. You stopped talking to him long before he stopped calling. You let your hurt fester in quiet ways, the kind that don't shout but wound just as deep. His words cut, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. I didn't know how, I whispered. Every time I tried, he looked at me like I was the reason he couldn't breathe. I thought if I gave him space, he'd come back on his own. Henry reached out, his fingers tracing the back of my hand. He maybe both forgot that love isn't space. It's staying, even when it hurts. For a long time, we just sat there, the fire popping softly between us. I leaned against him, resting my head on his shoulder. He smelled like rain and earth and the faint trace of soap from days ago. You know, he said quietly, when Daniel was a boy, he once asked me if love ever disappears. I told him no, that it only changes shape. I smiled sadly. What did he say? He said, then I hope it never turns into something ugly. My throat tightened. Maybe it did. He shook his head. No, it turned into something scared. There's a difference. Later, when the stars began to pierce the night, I found an old melody on my lips, a lullaby I used to hum when Daniel couldn't sleep. The tune was cracked and shaky, but it carried through the trees like a prayer. Henry smiled faintly. You haven't sung that in years. I didn't have a reason to. Maybe now you do. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who'd broken our son's trust, but still believed love could heal it. The man who'd lied, yes, but also carried guilt like a stone around his neck every day since. And I realized something. I wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. I was fighting to forgive. We talked for hours, quietly, the way people do when they know time is precious. He told me about the factory nights, the sleepless hours, the shame, the loneliness of pretending everything was fine. I told him about the silence at home, how I'd set the table for 3 long after Daniel stopped showing up, just in case.
Somewhere between confessions and tears, something shifted inside me. The pain didn't leave, but it softened around the edges. When the fire died down, I crawled closer to Henry and wrapped the blanket around both of us. His heartbeat was weak, but steady under my palm. I used to think we'd grow old watching Daniel's children run through the garden, I whispered. Now I'd give anything just to hear him call me Mom again. Henry's voice cracked. He will. How can you be so sure? He looked at me with eyes full of something that wasn't certainty, but faith. Because love doesn't end in the dark. It waits for dawn. We slept for a few hours, if you can call it sleep. Every sound woke me, the snap of branches, the whisper of wind, but each time I felt Henry's hand in mine, anchoring me. When morning came, the world felt changed, lighter somehow. The fear hadn't gone, but hope had slipped in through the cracks. Henry managed to stand without my help for the first time. His face was pale, but his smile reached his eyes. See, told you I'm not going anywhere. I smirked. Good, because I still need you to carry the basket when we get home. He laughed. And this time I laughed too. We followed the stream down the slope, moving slowly, but with purpose. Birds were singing again, the sound almost mocking in its cheerfulness. Yet in that strange way pain has of reminding you you're alive, I found myself grateful for it. At one point, Henry reached out, brushing his fingers against a wildflower blooming by the path. "Look," he said, "even after the storm." I nodded, feeling tears sting my eyes. It didn't give up. "Neither will we," he whispered. And right there, amid the ruin, the fear, the ghosts of everything broken, I leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a desperate kiss. It was soft, trembling, full of the years we'd lost and the ones we still hope to have. When I pulled back, he was crying too. "We'll make it home," I said. He nodded. "And when we do, we'll bring our son home too." By the second morning, the sky had turned the color of ash. Clouds pressed low, heavy with unshed rain. I could taste metal in the wind, storm or fate. I couldn't tell which one. Henry's breathing had grown shallow through the night. Every exhale sounded like something being torn away from me. Still, he tried to smile each time I caught him watching me. "I'm fine," he lied. "Just tired." I didn't argue. We both knew the truth. We followed the stream until it narrowed into a trickle that disappeared into rocks. The forest around us grew denser, darker. The world felt smaller somehow, closing in. When Henry stumbled, I caught him before he hit the ground. His skin burned under my touch. Fever. "We should stop." He shook his head weakly. "If we stop, we won't start again." "Then I'll drag you if I have to." He tried to laugh, but it came out a cough instead. Wet, deep, final. I pressed my hand against his chest. "You promised me, Henry." He looked at me, eyes glassy. "And I meant it." We rested beneath another pine. I built a small fire from what dry twigs I could find. The flame flickered, struggling against the wind. I sat close, wrapping Henry in what was left of my shawl. He gazed at the sky through the branches. "You know what I remember right now." "What?" "That day at the hospital, when Daniel was born. You cried because he didn't cry." I smiled faintly. "You slapped the doctor's hand when he tried to take him away." "He was so small," Henry's voice cracked. "So perfect. I thought if I loved him enough, I'd never fail him." I brushed his hair back. "You didn't fail him, Henry. You made mistakes, yes, but you never stopped loving him." He closed his eyes. "Sometimes love is the heaviest thing we carry." The wind picked up suddenly, whipping through the trees. I threw dirt on the fire to keep it from flaring. That's when I heard it. An engine, faint but real, grinding up the trail we'd followed. I froze. "Henry," I whispered. "Someone's coming." His eyes snapped open. "Hide." "What?" "Hide, if it's them." I grabbed his hand. "I'm not leaving you." He tried to push me toward the brush, but he didn't have the strength. The sound grew louder. Tires against gravel, doors slamming, footsteps crunching through wet leaves. Then voices. "Check near the ridge," Lena said,
her tone sharp, impatient. "I told you I can't." Daniel's voice broke. "I can't look again." My heart lurched. I pressed my finger to my lips, begging Henry for silence. We crouched low behind the fallen log. Through the leaves, I saw them. Daniel, pale and hollow-eyed, and Lena, her coat slick with rain. She scanned the forest like a hawk. "If anyone finds their bodies, it's over. You hear me? We lose everything." Daniel rubbed his temples, shaking. "Stop saying we. This was your idea." "Your parents were never going to let you go, Daniel. They would have taken everything back." "Enough." He snapped the last word. The sound of it hit me like a knife. Lena took a step closer to the cliff's edge, peering down. "Maybe the rain washed them farther. We should—" Her sentence cut off as a branch snapped beneath my foot. Silence. Then Daniel's head whipped toward the sound. Our eyes met through the trees. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. "Mom," he whispered. "Daniel?" My breath hitched. Lena spun around, eyes wide. "No." Before she could finish, Daniel was already running toward me. I wanted to step back, to run, but my body refused. Henry tried to rise, coughing blood, and I held him down. Daniel stumbled into the clearing, rain pouring over his face. He looked wild, terrified, broken. "You're alive," he said, as if the words themselves hurt. "Yes," I whispered. "We are." Lena appeared behind him, panic flashing in her eyes. "Daniel, don't." He turned on her. "You told me, you said they—" "I said what I had to," she screamed. "You were too weak to finish it." The sound of her voice made the forest itself seem to flinch. Henry coughed again, the sound sharp and wet. I knelt beside him, pressing my hand to his chest. Daniel's gaze followed the movement, horror dawning. "Dad!" Henry opened his eyes, faint but clear. "I'm still here, son." Daniel dropped to his knees, shaking. "I didn't mean, I thought, she said you—" Lena stepped back, realizing the tide had turned. "Daniel, listen to me." "No." His voice rose, breaking. "No more lies."
The storm broke then, thunder rolling through the valley like an angry god. Rain poured, soaking us all. Henry gasped, clutching my hand. I felt it. The weakening pulse, the slip between moments. "Stay with me," I begged. "Please." He looked at Daniel, his lips trembling. "I forgive you." Daniel's face crumpled. "Don't say that. Please don't." Henry smiled faintly. "It's not for you. It's for me." His eyes fluttered shut. For a second, I thought that was it, that the mountain had taken him. But he drew one last shaky breath. "Take care of her," he whispered. Then he went still. The world went silent again, except for the rain. I clutched him, screaming his name, but the wind carried it away. Daniel crawled forward, sobbing. "Dad, Dad, no." I turned on him, grief and fury colliding inside me. "You did this. You killed him." He didn't defend himself. He didn't even look up. He just pressed his forehead to the dirt and wept like the boy he once was. Lena backed away, trembling. "We have to go." I rose slowly, the rage steady now. You're not going anywhere. She froze. You wouldn't. I might, I said, my voice raw, but I'm not like you. I went to Henry, closing his eyes gently. Then I looked at Daniel, my son, my betrayer, my last living piece of him. I said, help me. Help me bring your father home. Daniel looked up, drenched, hollow. Then he nodded, choking back tears. Together we lifted Henry's body, the rain washing our faces clean and dirty all at once. For the first time since the fall, Daniel's hand brushed mine, and I didn't pull away. The storm passed as suddenly as it had come, leaving the mountain wrapped in a hush so deep it felt sacred. The rain eased into a whisper that soaked the soil and our clothes and Henry's still body. For a while I couldn't move. I held him, the way I had cradled Daniel when he was small, as if holding tighter could keep life from slipping away. My cheek rested against his chest until I realized there was no heartbeat left to chase. When I finally lifted my head, Daniel was still kneeling in the mud. The boy who pushed me into the abyss was gone. In his place knelt a man hollowed out by horror. He whispered, "Mom, I didn't mean it." "Don't," I said, my voice breaking. "Don't say you didn't mean it. You came here to make sure we were dead." He bowed his head, rain dripping from his hair. "I thought I already was." I wanted to strike him, to scream until the trees shook, but grief stole all the strength from me. Instead, I sat back, staring at Henry's face, peaceful at last. "You killed your father," I said quietly. Daniel's breath hitched. "I know." "Then why are you still here?" He looked up, eyes swollen and red. "Because I can't run anymore." We carried Henry down the slope together. The world felt heavier with every step. The air smelled of pine and ash and regret. Daniel tried to speak, but the only sounds that came were sobs he swallowed before they reached me. When he stumbled, I caught his arm, a reflex I hated myself for. My body still remembered what my heart wanted to forget. At a clearing, we stopped to rest. Henry lay between us, wrapped in my shawl. Daniel stared at the cloth like it was a sentence. "I wanted to save you," he said. "Lena said it was the only way, that if you both died, everything would be over. The debt, the shame, the lies. She said she'd fix it, that she'd take care of me." I laughed then, a sound that didn't belong to me. "And you believed her?" He nodded once, small, ashamed. "You were my son before you were her husband," I said. "Why didn't you come to me?" "I was angry," he whispered. "Angry that you never saw me. It was always Dad, his business, his plans, his mistakes. I wanted to be free of both of you." "Freedom bought with blood?" I said bitterly. He flinched. "I know. And if I could give it back, if I could give him back, I would." I wanted to tell him forgiveness wasn't mine to give anymore. But Henry's last words echoed in my mind. "Tell him I forgive him." We reached the old ranger trail again by dusk. I could see faint tire ruts, the path back to the world. Daniel stopped and turned to me. "What are you going to do?" I met his eyes. "What do you think I should do?" He looked at the ground.
Turn me in. Would that make it right? No, but it's what I deserve. I looked at him for a long moment. My son, my betrayer, my only family left. His hands trembled as he reached for Henry's body to lift it into the bed of the truck we'd found abandoned near the trailhead. He moved gently, like someone handling something holy. When the work was done, I leaned against the truck, too tired to cry. "Where's Lena?" I asked. He swallowed. She ran, said she couldn't be part of this anymore. Then she have to live with what she did, just like you will. Night fell hard. We sat in the cab of the truck, shivering, watching the rain streak across the windshield. Henry's wedding ring lay in my palm. I had taken it before wrapping him for the last time. Daniel broke the silence first. "Mom, what happens now?" I closed my hand around the ring. "Now, we make a choice." He waited. I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw both the child he'd been and the man he might still become. "If I go to the police," I said slowly, "you'll spend your life in prison. You'll pay for what you did, but you'll never heal." He nodded. "I deserve that. And if I don't," I continued, "then I'll spend the rest of my life lying again, just like your father did. Either way, one of us lives with the truth and the other with the guilt." Daniel's voice cracked. "So which is worse?" I looked out at the rain. "I don't know." We drove until the gas gauge dipped near empty. The road curved downward, revealing the first glow of town lights in the distance. Civilization, witnesses, police. Daniel slowed to a stop at a bend overlooking the valley. The rain had eased, leaving the air sharp and clear. He turned to me. "Tell me what to do." I stared at his hands on the steering wheel, the same hands that had pushed me from the cliff, the same hands that once held mine crossing the street.
"Turn yourself in," I said softly. "But not for punishment, for peace." He nodded slowly, tears glinting in his eyes. "Will you come with me?" "Yes," I whispered, "because I still believe you can come back." He covered his face, sobbing into his palms. I reached across the seat, resting my hand on his shoulder. He leaned into it like a child seeking warmth. We sat there for a long time, listening to the night. Somewhere beyond the trees, dawn waited. When Daniel finally started the engine again, I felt something inside me shift. Not forgiveness yet, but the space where forgiveness could grow. Henry's words returned. "Love doesn't end in the dark. It waits for dawn."
Weeks passed. The mountain was declared closed for investigation. Reporters came and went, hungry for a story of greed and blood. I didn't give them one. Instead, I stayed in our house, quiet, sunlit, filled with ghosts, but also with memories worth keeping. I planted a rose bush in the garden, the same place Henry used to fix the fence every spring. Its first bloom came late that year, pale and perfect. Sometimes letters arrived from the prison. Daniel wrote every week. Short, careful sentences that carried more truth than all the words we'd ever exchanged before. Mom, I'm taking classes. I'm helping in the kitchen. I talk to a counselor now. I dream about the mountain sometimes, but in the dream, you're both alive and laughing. I kept every letter in a box Henry once used for ledgers. It felt right that the place that once held debts now held redemption instead. One evening, I took a walk up the hill behind our home. The air smelled of rain again. I could see the valley lights below, blinking like tiny promises. I whispered into the wind, "We did it, Henry. He's coming back to me." And maybe it was only the breeze, but I thought I heard his voice answer, "You kept your faith. That's how love wins." Months later, Daniel stood at our front gate again, thinner, older, but steady. The day he was released, he came straight home. When I opened the door, we just looked at each other. No words, no explanations. Then I reached out and pulled him into my arms. He sobbed into my shoulder, whispering, "I don't deserve this." I smiled through my own tears. You don't have to deserve forgiveness, Daniel. You only have to live it. We buried Henry's ashes at the foot of that same hill. Daniel placed the wildflower he'd picked on the grave. I slipped Henry's wedding ring into the soil beside it. The wind moved gently through the trees. It didn't sound like grief anymore. It sounded like peace. That night, we sat on the porch watching the sunset fade. The silence between us was no longer heavy. It was full. A space where new words might grow. Daniel turned to me. "Do you think he'd forgive me?" I looked at the horizon, where the last light bled into the clouds. "He already did. Now you forgive yourself." He nodded slowly. And as darkness settled over the valley, I realized that the mountain hadn't destroyed us. It had stripped away everything false until only the truth remained. Love, bruised and battered, but alive. If love asked you to choose between justice and mercy, which would you give? Tell me in the comments what your heart would choose. And remember, sometimes the hardest forgiveness is the one you give yourself. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as I can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.